It gave me a lot of the skill sets as it relates to even sitting here today with you before a camera. It also introduced me to people I probably would have never had an opportunity to meet because I didn't come from a background or a family that was in the entertainment or anything. But those contacts helped me help my clients down the road. So one of the things I also always tell people is never underestimate where you might be today and how it can help you tomorrow.
Spotlights on, the moment's here. Voices of change, rising clear, leading with heart, fearless and bright, purpose and passion, light in the night. From the boardroom to the block, moving mountains, breaking locks with Taji, Shetty, we rise. Real talk, real life, real highs. So step in the light while leaders grow. This is Leaders in the Spotlight. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to Leaders in the Spotlight, where we dive into the highs, lows, and plot twists of leadership. I am Taji Charity, your host, and today's guest is the beautiful and phenomenal Miss Wendy Gladney. Wendy is widely known as the Purpose Partner. She is a coach, life strategist, consultant, author, and speaker with nearly 3 decades of experience empowering individuals, businesses, and organizations to reach their full potential. She is the founder of Seasons of Greatness Personal Services Plus Consulting and the nonprofit Forgiving for Living, which is focused on healing and forgiveness. A UCLA graduate with certifications from the Protocol School of Washington and International Coaching Federation. Wendy blends personal experience with professional expertise to help others transform stumbling blocks into stepping stones. Her work has taken her abroad as a Goodwill ambassador to South Africa, Israel, South Korea, and China. And she is a recognized columnist, award-winning community leader, and author of 2 books. At the core, Wendy is a woman of faith, family, and service, committed to her motto, healing without hate. It's a choice. It's a lifestyle. Pass it on. Miss Wendy, I got chills. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Taji. I've been waiting, and I am so sorry it has taken me so long, and I appreciate you for your endurance and patience. Thank you.
Oh, you know what? Some people just worth the wait. You are worth the wait. So I'm excited to just share all of your just wisdom and experience as a leader and a life coach. And I got a chance to learn something new about you. Before we started, you were an actress in the entertainment industry.
Yes, I was for close to 10 years.
10 years. Share with us real quickly, like some of the projects you worked on.
Well, it's so interesting because I started out as an extra back when we had a union called SEG. I don't even think that's around anymore.
Oh, wow.
But I started as a background person, and then one day I was on a set, and this lady, she just kept watching me, and she was like, you look like soap opera material. And I was kind of like, whatever that means, because I really didn't know. And so anyway, I started auditioning. She took me on, and my first soap opera was Days of Our Lives.
Wow.
And then I was on another one, but it only lasted for a little bit. It was called Capital. I don't know who would even remember that soap opera called Capital. And then I was blessed and fortunate. I had small roles on Falcon Crest, Dallas, Cheers. Just trying to remember the different shows. And then also commercials. So that was a blessing.
Wow.
I'm grateful for that experience. It was really good. Yes, of
course. That's the Hollywood dream. Somebody just look at you and like, you look like you fit the industry. Yeah. So how did we transition from actress to life coach, consultant, and just really pouring into people, because that is the work you do.
Yeah.
Pouring into people.
Well, what's really interesting is when I think of, there's a couple people that come to my mind, and I have one friend, her name is Bunny Wilson.
Wait, hold on, I'm gonna drink to that because I love me some Peabody Wilson, okay?
And we're still very, very good and dear friends to this day. Yes. But she used to have this message called All Around Tapestry. Yes. And so when you think of a tapestry, it's about blending and bringing different colors together, different textures, different patterns.
Yeah.
And then maybe even when you turn it on the other side, it looks a little messy,
right?
But on the top side, but you need every piece of that to make it come together.
Yes.
So when I think about my life and my journey and the way that I've gotten even to where I am today from a career perspective, everything has just been one step in front of the other to get me here.
Yeah.
And so when I think about the acting, and you might say, well, how did you get from that to this? Is when I was a little girl, a very little girl, I always wanted to be in television. And I didn't know in what facet. I can't really say I wanted to be an actress. I thought of more like the Ed Sullivan Show or things like that, where I could maybe be even like a Vanna White on something.
Yeah, look,
you know,
that's the job I wanted, y'all.
yeah, I mean, it was something more along that journey versus an actress in the beginning. I just wanted to do television.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have that path. And my grandmother, she didn't really feel like I should focus on that. She thought that I should really go to college and really work on getting a degree. And back in those days where they say that you can really get a job.
Right.
But as it would be, as I got out of college and I was married, and I said I really would like to try this and just try it part-time. And so it gave me a lot of the skill sets as it relates to even sitting here today with you before a camera. It also introduced me to people I probably would have never had an opportunity to meet because I didn't come from a background or a family that was in the entertainment or anything. But those contacts helped me help my clients down the road. So one of the things I also always tell people is never underestimate where you might be today and how it can help you tomorrow.
Ooh, that's so good.
And that has been very key for me. When I got out of the entertainment industry per se, because I still kind of am involved in different ways as it relates to television or whatever. But when I got out of that and started thinking about, Lord, where do you have me going? What is it? And my first business, Personal Services Plus, that you mentioned, started out as an event management company.
Really?
So I did event management for a lot of the major organizations for, gosh, I don't know. I can't even remember how long, because I would say close to 25 years, because it just was a segue. What happened was I served as a volunteer, and I used to just volunteer my time for like the Urban League and just different things. And by the way, I started volunteering with the Urban League back in, I don't mind telling my age, but I'm 64, back when I was 17.
Really?
And I had just won a beauty contest that was put on by the Urban League. And that was when John Mack was still here, and just different people that from back in that day. Anyway, as part of that role as Miss Urban League, they asked me to go around the college campuses, because I was a student at UCLA, to encourage other young people to get back involved with civic engagement and social activism and becoming a member of the Urban League, because that's what they represented. So that was there inside of me in terms of being involved in community. And then also growing up, my grandmother, she was a part of the Eastern Star. And then we grew up in church. And and she believed that an idle mind was a devil's workshop.
Part.
So she kept us busy. She kept us all very, very busy. We could never tell her we had nothing to do. Oh my goodness, get ready. Because if you told her that you didn't have anything to do, she would find something for you to do. But she was a product of the South. My grandmother was originally from Texas, came west to California because she wanted to give a better life for her family. So she and my grandfather migrated. They met at Bishop College and HBCU. My grandfather was a professor and my grandmother was a student, and that's how they met. But they actually had to leave Texas. My grandfather was going to be lynched.
Oh, wow.
Long story for another day. But
I'm ready to dive in. I'm like, do tell.
And I'm also the historian of our family. So
this is so good.
I'll have to share more with you about all of that. But so anyway, so when they came west, my grandmother was older. She was a much older woman. She had children older and so forth. So my grandmother was actually firstborn generation free in our family. So her father was a slave and freed at 3 years old. And yes, because her father was born in 1861. My grandmother was born in 1901. She was the first child of his second marriage because his first wife died in childbirth.
Okay.
And so he was much older when my grandmother was born. So my grandmother really made sure that even though we were Californians, so to speak, we didn't forget our roots in Texas, our southern roots. And she made sure that we understood the sacrifices that were made. You know, so I grew up in the midst of the civil rights movement. So we were taught an obligation to give back, to make a difference. No matter where you are, you can make a difference. It doesn't matter how high or how low, because there is nothing too low to make a difference. So it's been a seed in me my entire life.
Oh, I love it.
And I think that her leadership, being a person of, my grandmother didn't say I love you and all that, but you knew she did just by the way that she took care of us, the way she shared her life, the way she shared responsibility and told us that we could be anything that we wanted to be. And that as long as we kept God first and family and community. So, I mean, that was her 3 words. It was God, which meant church too, you know, family and community.
Look, this is all so rich. I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat just wanting to unpack your whole family history, like to go even deeper. That is absolutely just amazing. So your grandmother basically instilled leadership in you at a very early age.
Totally. Yes. I mean, and she lived it. She walked it and talked it, but in a quiet spirit. My grandmother didn't go for the limelight. She wasn't trying to be noticed or anything. She was about her business. And what she would always say to me, she says, I'm about my Father's business, which meant the Lord. And so she just got up on purpose every day with what she was called to do. And my grandmother lived to almost 100 years old. And I mean, she's gone on to glory now. But yes, she was with us for a very long time. And I thank God every day for her. I don't know if you really know my childhood or the background of even how Forgiving for Living was created.
No, but I want to know. Tell us.
Well, I was actually abandoned by my birth mother. I am a biracial child. My mother was white. My father's African American. And when my mother had me, her family disowned her. And so my mother couldn't handle that. And my mother was young. I mean, at the time, my mother was 18 years old. And she was smitten by my father and was involved. And she got pregnant with me. And my grandmother on my father's side said, son, you laid down with that young lady. You're going to now stand with that young lady and marry her and have this child. So when all of that was happening, my mother didn't understand it. I mean, I've come to understand that now.
Yes.
You know, I didn't understand all that, of course, as a child and when I was younger. But basically, her family disowned her and shut the door. But what's ironic about that is my mother's of German descent, and my grandfathers, both of my grandfathers on my mother's side, the paternal and maternal sides, were Lutheran pastors.
What?
Who spoke and taught and preached brotherly love, but did not live that when it came to who you brought home.
Oh my.
And so I was not raised by my mother's family at all, or my mom. She left when I was around 3 years old. Okay. So I was raised by my father's mother primarily. Yes. Now, I say primarily because I also lived part of the time with my father. Okay. And at that time, my father lived a pretty wayward life. My father actually was a musician, became a drug dealer, became a pimp, and ran a gambling house. And so I became a victim of sexual abuse at the age of 6 until I was 16 by my father.
Oh my gosh.
So my whole life story, that's why forgiveness is a big deal for me.
Yes.
Because when I was 16 years old, my grandmother told me my father was in the hospital and that he had a heart attack. And so she said, Wendy, you need to go to the hospital because this may be goodbye. So I remember going to the hospital. I grew up in Riverside, not too far, from where we are in terms of Southern California. And while he was there, I just looked at my father and I just said, Dad, I forgive you for everything that you've done to me. And I hope you get your soul right with God before you go. And my father shed a tear. He was quiet. And he ended up being in the hospital almost close to about 3 weeks or so. And But when he got out of the hospital, over time, it wasn't instantaneously, but over time, he actually gave his life back to the Lord. Because you have to understand, if I was raised in the church by my grandmother, that means her children were too.
Absolutely.
So, and the Word of God says, train up a child in the way that they should go. And when he is old, he will not depart.
Right.
And so he eventually came back. And my father actually, over years now, and now I'm about to leave to go to college. I'm getting older and so forth. But over time, my father actually became a pastor of a church. And he went back out into the streets and began to bring in the very same people he used to run with and shared Christ with them. Now, of course, all of them didn't want to hear it, but a lot of them did, because they knew that he was sincere, that he had really done we always say a 360, but it's really a 180, because 360 will take you back to where you were.
Right.
He did a complete 180 of, really turning his life over to the Lord and using what God had given him to do that. Now, it would take many, many years before my father and I actually were able to deal with healing and overcoming. But it was after I was married, had my children, and one day I remember calling my father, and I said, and by now he had gotten out of that life in the world, and I said, I need to talk to you. I said, because I'm struggling, and I'm struggling as an adult woman in a marriage and as a mother. How could you have done what you did to me? And one of the things he said to me, we talked all day that day. I went to Riverside and sat with my dad, and we walked. But he says, Wendy, I was sick. He said, I was caught up in a drug life. I was caught up in a whole different world. And I saw you as my property, as I saw every other woman. He said, and when you still did so well, because I did achieve very well in school, he said, it didn't register with me that I was hurting you. And now, we would be here all day if we try to psychologically unpack all that.
Yes.
But he felt that because I was doing well in school, I did very well in school in terms of just being able to keep my head up.
Yes.
Most people never knew till years later what I went through behind closed doors at home.
Wow.
And I went to a high school called Riverside Polytechnic, and I was the first African American to win homecoming queen. Oh. And I went to school with Cheryl Miller and a bunch of other people that came out of our supervisor, Holly Mitchell.
Oh wow, love Supervisor Mitchell.
So we all come from the same high school, and but I'm older than Supervisor Mitchell, and I'm older than Cheryl Miller. But they were there while I was there. I was like a senior when they were freshmen or something. And but I was the first African American to win homecoming queen of a predominantly white high school. I was also student body president. A BSU president and student body vice president, head varsity cheerleader. But what my father did not understand was part of my activities and staying busy was because also I didn't want to go home. And also, it was also where I found a level of attention, accolades, and love, because when you do well in school, teachers are like, yay,
absolutely.
And that's not what I was getting from my father.
Right.
And my grandmother made things solid as a home, but I wasn't always living under her roof. It was back and forth sometimes.
And she never knew either.
Well, she knew. She found out later, but you have to understand the generation. Back then, incest was not something that was discussed. It was pushed under a rug.
Right.
It was, be quiet. It was, and then some in the family don't believe it. And it wasn't until actually one of my uncles walked in, actually heard me scream and busted a window, came in the house and pulled my father off me. And so that's how it came really to an end, where the family also believed and said, oh, she's been telling the truth all these years. It's kind of like, wouldn't make this up. So in my work today, even through Forgiving for Living and just in general, I try to listen. I try to hear what people are saying. I try to even hear what they're not saying, to hear what's going on behind the scene as relates to what's happening in their life.
Yes.
Because oftentimes when people are hurting, well, first, hurt people.
Right.
And we know that. But when people are hurting, depending on where they are in life, because I was a youth, I was a young person.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was being told was if I told, I would go to foster care. And anything seems to be better than going somewhere you don't know.
Right.
Like staying in what you know.
What you're familiar with.
What you're familiar with, you know, as a child.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're like 10, you know, because I don't really remember a lot of the dialogue between like 6 and 10 years old.
Yeah.
But like 10, 11, 12, 13. And let me also say, this was not like it was an every night occurrence. It was like when my father would get high.
Right.
When he would do certain things. And I was living with him, I would be the victim.
Yes.
You know, and there was no mother to scream out to.
Right.
You know, in the house. Right. So anyway.
And you were only child?
No. I actually have a brother and 2 sisters.
Okay.
And we all have the same father, and my sisters have a different mom.
Okay.
But I let them all tell their own story.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Understood.
As it relates to how everything, but we're all close as a family today. I am the eldest of all the children. And my brother is actually a pastor of a church.
Oh, wow.
And my one sister, Sarah, is the president of the Black Business Association.
Oh my gosh.
In Los Angeles.
Talk about a beautiful tapestry, right?
Yeah. And then my baby sister, she's doing great things over at Nike. So
amazing. I mean, there's just so much that we can dive into and unpack. Like, thank you so much. The one thing I think I'm learning from just this conversation, what's being affirmed in me is that 1, healing is a journey.
Yes.
And 2, the scripture that says we all overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yes.
Like, this testimony that you've just shared right now is so powerful. And oftentimes people experience life and don't know how to share that story.
Yes.
They don't know how to forgive. They don't know how to get to the other side.
Yes.
Of the journey. And so I'm assuming that's what probably 1 or 2 of your books are about.
Oh yes.
What's the title of your books?
Well, one is called The Preacher's Daughter of Memory, because my father became a preacher. And then I also have Healing Without Hate. It's a choice. It's a lifestyle. Pass it on. That's more of a workbook.
Okay.
And then I have Forgiveness, Change Your Life Forever. So that's more of a book, where the other one's a workbook. I have to always kind of keep it in my mind. Right. And then I actually have another small book called Seasons of Greatness, which talks about the different seasons of life, which is actually part of your gift package that I gave you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can't wait to read it.
But I also want to just share one more thing about that I think is really important, because, you know, when we, I am a believer, I'm a Christian, and I think sometimes we will talk about prayer or the power of prayer, but we underestimate it sometimes. So when things happen, we become doubtful. So what I mean by that is my father did change his life. My father became a pastor of a church. My dad became someone that became actually very well respected in our city and rose above, you know, all of the negativity. It wasn't hidden under the carpet. People knew, you know, but they saw the light. They saw the change. Yeah. And then when I met my mom when I was 18 years old. When I went to college, I said, I want to meet my mom. I didn't even have a photograph of her, so I didn't know what my mom looked like.
Oh, wow.
But people kept telling me, you look just like your mom. So I wanted to meet my mother. And I found out that my mother lived very close to where I grew up my entire life in Riverside.
Really?
She lived in Cabazon. Most people know Cabazon by the outlet.
Okay.
You know, because there's a big outlet out there. She grew up. She was primarily in Palm Springs, but at the time she was in Cabazon. So anyway, I met her when I was 18. She was remarried. I was not welcomed back into her life at that time. Okay. More so probably because of the husband she was married to at the time. Yeah. But I kept in touch with her. I would write her. And I periodically would go see her. Okay. But then I got a call one day. And I was 30 years old, so that's 12 years later. And she said, Wendy, Eric has passed away, he's died, and he's left me homeless. I have nowhere to go. And so I said, okay. And she said, will you help me? So that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's kind of like where, what you say, are you going to do it? So I was married at the time. And I talked to my husband, and he said, well, you always said you wanted to know who your mom was. I guess this is how you're going to learn her.
Oh, wow.
And so we went and we picked up my mom, and my mom moved in with us, and she ended up living with us. I took care of her for 11 years. She passed away when I was 41, so I took care of her for the rest of her life. And it was not easy. It was not cute.
Yeah.
She never once said, I love you. There were many days when I say, Mom, do you love me? Can you just tell me that?
Yeah.
And she never did. And I struggled. But you know what I learned during that time? There's a few things, and this is what I wanted to share. Number one, sometimes God uses us as conduits, because she actually became close to my daughter, who you know.
Yes.
And they actually had their own relationship. So when my mom passed away, my daughter was a student at Spelman College, and she came home for the funeral, and she was quiet back then. I don't know how quiet she is now, but she was kind of very reserved and quiet. And so it was a very small service. It was actually at my brother's church, because my brother's a pastor, and there was just a handful of people there, mainly people who came to support my brother and I.
Yeah.
And my daughter looked at me and she said, Mom, may I get up and say something? And I said, of course, it's your grandmother. So she stood up and she, said a few things, but then she said, I know that my grandmother was not the mother my mom always hoped for, but she was the grandmother that I was thankful for. And,
oh my goodness.
And I don't want to cry.
I'm looking for tissue. Lord have mercy.
She said, I am grateful. And she turned and looked at me and she said, Mom, thank you for letting my grandmother come live with us, so I would get to know who she was. And that's when God spoke to me and said, it's not always all about you. It's sometimes about legacy and future generations, and breaking cycles and cutting negative cords. And if I had not let my mom come and live with us, my children would have never known who their grandmother was. Right. My daughter would have not understood. Now she's a mother. So just the legacy of understanding generations. And then the other point that I wanted to make that I think is quite interesting is during the time that my mother lived with us, my father had now already turned his life around and was a pastor of a church. We were going to my father's church and supporting his ministry. And my mother got baptized by my father, which was her first husband.
Okay, the Lifetime movie network, we need the whole movie version.
Yeah, so
this is wild.
Baptized my mother, and even though my mother grew up in a Christian home, her father was a Lutheran pastor, remember?
Right.
But we can go to church our entire lives and still never be saved.
Absolutely.
And she actually gave her life to the Lord under my father's ministry.
Oh my God.
So I that was another, thing that the Lord showed me, that I was a conduit to save my mother's soul. That if I had not, so that it was not about me. I mean, so what I really want to make sure is clear is that sometimes when you're called to do a mission, certain things may not happen exactly the way you want or hope, but if we're submitted to the will of God in our lives, what will come from that is far greater. So I may not have ever heard my mother say, I love you, but I know she's in heaven. I know my daughter had a relationship and used to snuggle in bed with, I never even snuggled in bed with my mom.
Right.
But she did, so, I hope that those who see your show know that sometimes we're called for a higher purpose, that sometimes we may not understand and we may not see all of the benefits to ourselves, but it's helping others. And that's really what leadership is about.
There's really nothing left for me to say, Miss Wendy.
Yeah.
I mean, you have just blessed my whole entire soul in this time of just talking, and I need to pull myself together. But thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
And oftentimes it's just, for me, confirmation that we may not always have the answer, but we trust the process.
Yes.
And we know that if God is in control, He is working all things for our good.
Together.
He's working it out together.
Definitely.
For our good. And this was just such a powerful reminder of that. Because sometimes as as leaders, we, especially leaders, and you're balancing leadership and you're balancing family,
Yes.
and you're trying to figure things out and things don't make sense. You feel like God is pulling you one way, but all of these distractions and just things just don't make sense.
Yes. May I say something?
Please do.
Not to cut you off. It's like when I did my very first workbook, Healing Without Hate, How to Forgive to Live, I put a beautifully gift wrap box as the cover of the book. And the reason why I did that was because oftentimes we can look at people, and this is part of some of the things that I've experienced, where people look at you and externally think, oh, she thinks she's this, she thinks she's that, or they think she's had a perfect life, or she thinks she's pretty or cute or whatever, you know. But that box inside might have had a piece of china in it, and if it's been thrown around, it is completely shattered inside. But you won't know that because you're just looking at the outside of the box and the ribbon on the box. You know, and that's why also I think it's so important, especially for those of us that have said that we're called to service, whether it's to adults or children. You got to take the time to try to get to know that person, you know, inside and out. Don't prejudge. Don't prejudge, because when you prejudge, you know, you could be making all the wrong assumptions, you know, and not really understand that soul of a person and what they've been through.
Absolutely.
So that's why I try, even in everything I do, as a coach, as a consultant, as a wife, as a mom, as a friend, you know, to just listen and to be there for people, and then share when appropriate for those who may not know my story, when it's appropriate, because then they understand that, you know, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yes.
And when you can actually understand, I understand hurt, I understand pain. Even when you see me smiling, I understand.
Oh my God. Amen. I feel like let the church say amen. And it reminds me of conversations that I have with my team, because we serve youth, and we serve youth that have been impacted by foster care. And we always say connect before correct.
Oh, I love that.
Connect before you try to correct a behavior or, you know, an outburst or whatever, or an attitude or whatever that is. You have to connect with the individual first.
You might see that again, but I'll give you the credit.
Go
Connect
right ahead.
before you correct, because you know I'm a columnist, so you might see that in the paper somewhere.
I love it, and I'm sure I got it from someone else, but please feel free. Ms. Wendy, I mean, I feel like this is just scraping the surface of such a deep conversation that can really help a lot of people. And I am so serious about Lifetime. Somebody, have you ever thought about doing a movie version of your life?
Well, actually, Showtime. Okay, so I don't know. Do you know Akusa Wabusia?
No.
Okay, Akusa Wabusia is a beautiful, wonderful actress. She was in The Color Purple. She played Whoopi Goldberg's little sister from Going Through the Field.
Okay, yes.
And she wrote a wonderful book called A Bintu Blackbird. And she's a sister friend that I actually met through the fellowship with Bunny and Frank Wilson many, many years ago. And when she received my book, The Preacher's Daughter of Memory, which tells my story, it took her forever, she said, to get around to it, because back then she was going back and forth between London, Ghana, and New York. And she said, I finally said, okay, Wendy sent me this book, I gotta read it. And she actually sat down and she read the book. She said, I couldn't put it down. I took it to the kitchen, I took it to the bathroom, I took it everywhere I went. And when she finished it, she actually sent it to Oprah, because she knew her. And she was, this is something you need to read. And it never got read, from what I understood. But another person that was a part of our fellowship, her name was Corinne Duke, who's actually passed on. She was George Duke's wife. And we were all part of the same Bible study fellowship. She got it into the hands of somebody at Showtime. And so I actually had a meeting with a vice president at Showtime. But the problem was, they wanted to change my story. You know, they wanted me to have been turned out, become a prostitute. I mean, that's not my story. You know, that is not my story. That even though I experienced certain things, God had another plan for me and another path. And I wanted my story. I understand Hollywood. You know, I've been a part of it in the past. But I did not want so many changes to go totally against who I was.
Good for you.
That it couldn't help young ladies or anyone that may be going through certain things that feels like only that would be the only path for them.
Right.
That would be the only hope for them.
Yes.
And so I didn't go with the option. It was called an option. I didn't go with it.
Yeah.
And so, and then my daughter, she actually helped me and found a screenwriter and had the book turned into a screenplay. And then I actually did a play of my life that ran at the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center on Washington Boulevard. So, and we sold out every week for a month. It was a 4-week run.
Top actresses. I missed all of this.
Top actresses, did scale. Basically they gave it to me at just the union rate, and worked for me. And I had a wonderful director and everything, but I haven't gotten it past that. And so what my whole thing is, if it's God's will, it will be.
It will.
But only if it's what He wants.
And look, and amen to that. I can see it, and Lord, I pray that it is your will, because that is a story that I think will help so many young people who are hurting and don't know how to get to the other side.
And adults.
And exactly,
There's
adults
so many,
as well. That's living with the trauma of their pain, and don't know how to address it, and don't know how to forgive. Miss Wendy, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my, like I said, this was so well worth the wait. Oh my gosh. And I feel like, again, there's so much more to unpack, but I could sit and listen to you for just hours. I feel like I just want to, it feels like almost like a therapy session for me, but this has been absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much, Taiji.
Yes.
I appreciate you. I really do.
And we will tag the book and drop the book in the comment section so people can check out the book. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the show today. I don't even know how to wrap this up other than just gratitude, and just hope that you will grab something that would really help you move forward in your journey. And especially when there is forgiveness that needs to happen, because we all experience hurt, but we don't all know how to forgive. And I think that Miss Wendy's story can really help us unpack our own trauma. So until next time, please remember to do those 3 magical words: like, share, and definitely subscribe. But most importantly, please share. I know there are several people that need to hear this story. So thank you. And until next time, have an amazing day. Bye now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today. I hope you were inspired and you gained some valuable nuggets that will help you to become a better leader and to walk in your God-given authority. Bye until next time.